They took everything from her home, her safety, and her way back. But they could not take her kindness, and they never imagined how far the truth would travel to find her again. Once upon a time, there lived a widower named Thomas, a quiet and simple man whose entire world was his only daughter, Yelena. From the moment she could walk, she was gentle in her ways, soft in her words, and hardworking beyond her years. And Thomas often looked at her with pride, believing that no treasure in the world could equal the goodness of her heart. When Yelena was still young, Thomas remarried, hoping to bring warmth and order back into the house. And so a widow named Margaret entered his home, bringing with her her own daughter, Lucy. And from that very day, the air inside the house slowly began to change. Lucy was lazy by nature, stubborn in spirit, and sharp in her tongue. Yet Margaret adored her blindly, excusing every fault because she was her own flesh and blood. And whatever comfort, rest, and kindness Margaret spared Lucy, she placed as a burden upon Yelena instead. Everything that was tiring, everything that was heavy, everything that made a mess or required patience fell upon Yelena's shoulders, not because she was weak, but because she was obedient, kind, and silent, and that silence made her an easy target. Margaret ruled Yelena with a cold and iron heart, watching her closely, correcting her harshly, and never once offering praise, while Lucy mocked her endlessly, pricking her with cruel words, laughing at her tired eyes, and treating her patience as if it were a crime. Whenever hard work appeared, Margaret's voice would echo through the house, calling Yelena's name sharply, and Yelena would come at once, lowering her head, ready to obey, even when her hands already ached and her body begged for rest. She was sent to fetch dry wood from the forest, her small arms wrapped around heavy bundles, then ordered to drag sacks of grain to the mill, her feet stumbling on the road. And when she returned home, she was made to cook, clean, wash, and scrub until night fell. From morning until darkness, Yelena knew no rest, and even when she believed her work was finally finished, Margaret would find something else for her to do, as if peace itself was forbidden to her. In the evenings, when the two sisters went to the village to spin, Yelena worked tirelessly, her fingers moving quickly as she filled an entire colander with bobbins, while Lucy sat idle, watching, waiting, and plotting. Late at night, when Yelena returned home exhausted, Lucy would leap over the fence, smile sweetly, and say in a soft voice, "Give me the colander, I'll hold it while you climb." And trusting her, Yelena would hand it over. But the moment Yelena turned away, Lucy would rush into the house and announce loudly that she had spun all the bobbins herself. And when Yelena tried to speak the truth, she was shouted down, mocked, and called a liar. Humiliated and ashamed, Yelena learned to remain silent, lowering her head and walking away, swallowing her tears, because speaking only brought more pain. When Sunday came, Lucy was brushed, dressed in her finest clothes, and sent off to the village dances and festivities, laughing as she went, while Yelena stayed behind, standing quietly at the doorway. She would watch the distant lights flicker in the night and whisper to herself that if she continued to work honestly and do what was right, perhaps one day what was denied to her would be returned. One day, while Thomas was away from home, Margaret decided that Elena's goodness had lasted long enough, and a cold plan formed in her heart, darker than any cruelty she had shown before. She called Elena to her side and spoke in a false, sorrowful voice, saying, "Elena, your father no longer wants you here. He says you are a burden and a disgrace to this house." Elena froze, her breath catching in her chest, and in a trembling voice she asked, "My father said that about me?" And before Margaret could answer, Lucy laughed softly and said, "He is ashamed of you. You must leave before he returns." Elena's heart shattered, but she did not argue because she trusted them, and believing that her own father had rejected her, she quietly prepared to leave. Margaret and Lucy led Elena away from the house, walking with her beyond familiar roads, deeper and deeper into the forest, where the trees grew taller, the paths narrower, and the light slowly faded. At last Margaret stopped, pointed ahead, and said coldly, "Go that way. You will find work and shelter." And without waiting for a reply, she and Lucy turned back and disappeared between the trees. Elena called after them, her voice echoing through the forest, but no answer came, and when she tried to return the way she had come, every path looked the same, twisting and turning, until she realized the terrible truth. She was lost, completely alone, abandoned on purpose, and fear crept into her heart as night began to fall. She walked and cried, stumbling over roots and stones, yet even in her fear she whispered softly, "God will not abandon me, even if people have," and with that fragile hope she continued forward. Back at the house, when Thomas returned and did not see his daughter, worry filled his heart, and he asked urgently, "Where is Elena?" Margaret replied without hesitation, "She ran away. She was disobedient and ungrateful." Lucy added cruelly, "She brought shame to this house." And Thomas, confused, tired, and broken-hearted, believed the lie, never knowing that his child had been led into the forest to disappear. And so Elena's journey truly began, not because her father rejected her, but because lies and cruelty pushed her into the world alone. Elena walked on through the forest for a long time, her feet aching, her throat dry, and her heart heavy with sorrow. Yet she did not sit down to give up, because somewhere deep inside her, a quiet voice reminded her that goodness was not meant to end in darkness. As she followed the winding path, the trees slowly began to thin, and the forest opened into a lonely road where silence pressed heavily on her ears. It was there, by the side of the road, that she saw a dog lying weak and motionless on the ground, its ribs visible beneath its skin, and its eyes dull with hunger and pain. Elena stopped at once and knelt beside the animal, and to her surprise, the dog lifted its head and spoke in a faint voice, saying, "Good girl, have pity on me and take care of me, and one day I will reward you." Without hesitation, Elena forgot her own fear and exhaustion. She gently lifted the dog, washed its wounds with water she had saved, cleaned its fur carefully, and laid it down in the shade so it could rest. She stayed with it until it breathed calmly again, and only then did she rise and continue her journey, unaware that her kindness had already been remembered. Not far ahead, Elena came upon a beautiful pear tree standing alone beside the road, its branches heavy with leaves, yet its trunk and fruit were covered in crawling caterpillars. As she approached, the tree rustled softly and spoke, saying, "Brave girl, rid me of these creatures and clean my branches, and I will reward you one day." Elena sighed softly, rolled up her sleeves, and began to work, carefully removing each caterpillar, cleaning the bark, and breaking away dead branches until the tree stood tall and free once more. When she finished, she wiped the sweat from her brow and continued walking, her hands tired, but her heart strangely light. As the road stretched onward, Elena discovered a ruined fountain, dry, cracked, and forgotten, hidden beneath weeds and dust. When she touched its stone edge, a voice echoed gently, "Hard-working girl, clean me and care for me, and I will reward you one day." Elena fetched water, scrubbed the stone until it shone, cleared the debris, and restored the fountain as best she could, watching as clear water slowly returned to its basin. She smiled faintly and moved on, never stopping to ask why kindness kept following her path. Further ahead, just as the sun began to sink, she found a dilapidated oven standing crooked and broken, its stones loose and its walls cracked. The oven creaked and spoke. "Brave girl, repair me and make me whole again, and I will reward you one day." Though her strength was nearly gone, Elena knelt, moistened clay, filled the cracks, set the stones in place, cleaned the soot, and worked until the oven stood firm once more. When she finished, she washed her hands, whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, and continued walking through the fading light. She walked through the night and into the next day, sometimes unsure of her direction, sometimes frightened by strange sounds, yet she never lost faith in God, telling herself again and again that she had not been brought this far to be abandoned. At last, one peaceful morning, after crossing a dark stretch of forest, Elena reached a wide meadow bathed in soft light, and in the center of it stood a small house completely covered in vines and flowers, as if nature itself had chosen to protect it. As Elena approached, the door opened, and an old woman stepped out, her face kind, her eyes gentle, and her voice calm as she asked, "Who are you, child, and what brings you here?"
Elena bowed her head and answered honestly, saying, "I am a poor girl without a mother and without a home, and God alone knows how much I have suffered. I seek work and shelter, and though I am lost, I believe God guided me to this place." The old woman smiled warmly and replied, "Then God truly has led you here. I am Lady Melody. Serve faithfully today, and I promise you will not leave my house empty-handed." Lady Melody explained her tasks, telling Elena to wash and feed her children who were still sleeping, and to prepare her meal carefully, not too hot and not too cold, before she returned from church. After speaking, Lady Melody left, and Elena immediately set to work, heating water and calling gently, "Children, children, come and be washed." When she looked up, she gasped softly, for the courtyard and surrounding woods were filled with wild animals of every kind, watching her quietly. Though surprised, Elena did not hesitate. One by one she washed, cleaned their fur and feathers, fed them, and treated each with patience and care. When Lady Melody returned and saw her children clean, calm, and content, she was deeply pleased. After the meal, she told Elena to go up to the attic and choose whichever chest she wished as her reward, warning her not to open it until she returned home. Elena climbed the stairs and saw many chests, some new and shining, others old and worn, and without greed or hesitation, she chose the oldest and ugliest among them. Lady Melody frowned slightly, but said nothing, blessed Elena, and watched as she set off toward her father's house with the chest upon her back. As Elena walked home, the oven she had repaired was filled with golden cakes, and she ate her fill and took some for the road. The fountain overflowed with clear cold water, and 2 silver cups rested on its edge, one of which she carried with her. The pear tree bowed its branches, heavy with ripe fruit, and Elena took what she needed. At last, the dog she had helped returned, healthy and strong, wearing a collar of shining ducats, which it placed gently before her as a gift of gratitude. When Elena finally reached her father's house, Thomas ran to her, tears streaming from his face, holding her tightly and crying, "Why did you leave me, my child?" And Elena, confused and trembling, answered, "Father, you told me to go. They said you did not want me any more. They took me into the forest, and I lost my way."
At those words, Thomas cried out in anguish, saying, "I do not want treasures, I do not want gold, I only want you." And as Elena told him everything, the lies were revealed. Thomas confronted Margaret and Lucy, and when the truth came out, his heart hardened against them. Though they fell to their knees and begged for forgiveness, he drove them from the house, refusing to shelter such cruelty. Elena, with tears in her eyes, forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because her heart could not hold hatred. Margaret and Lucy were forced to live their lives working in other people's houses, enduring insult, shame, and misery, while Elena remained with her father in peace, proving that kindness may suffer, but it is never defeated, and that truth, no matter how long it takes, always finds its way home.